Hello, hello. Hi, Matthew. Welcome to Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we teach you how to optimize your AWS experience and all of your usage on AWS. Happy that you are here joining us today. Um, how's it going? How's your Thursday?
Hi, Savannah. So glad to be here. Thursday, great because there's only one day left.
Right, weekend's coming up. Hopefully, it's summer. We were just talking about high temperatures in the pre-room. Sounds like it's a little toasty where you're at.
It's
Hopefully, we get some sunshine in
it's
Seattle.
gonna be 93 degrees today, and honestly, in Central Ohio, we're not used to this. It's,
Oh
it's
my
kind of
gosh.
unusual,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we'll see how this goes. And honestly, hopefully the electricity will stay on.
No AC in 93. That sounds like a nightmare to me, to be honest.
I'm not even worried about that. Hey, we have a show to do.
True. All right. Well, we can get into it. You are here today to talk a little bit about technical debt and teach us how to address it. But before we get into that, can you give me just a quick 1 minute, 2 minute intro and tell us who you are, what your background is, and why you're excited about AWS?
Yeah, absolutely. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Matthew Jorat, Customer Solutions Manager at AWS. I began my career at a software startup. I was that person who would take a physical CD. Let me pause for a second. If there's
You
anyone
have
that
my
will join
attention.
this, if anyone joins the stream who has never actually held a physical CD in their hands, drop a note in the chat. Let's have a good laugh. So I would take a physical CD of software, get on a plane, travel to my customers' data centers, and then install the software on their physical server. And I did that for years.
Wow.
And then I heard, yeah, and then I heard about this new offering from Amazon of all companies that helps you put your application in the cloud. I actually became one of the early AWS adopters. The rest is history. Here I am at AWS for the past 20 or so months.
Awesome.
My role actually as customer solutions manager is, among other things, identifying, enabling, and accelerating business opportunities for my customers. I'm generally just really hyper focused on execution side of things. And by the way, Savannah, thank you so much for having me on Twitch. I can now sort of
Thanks for
check
being
off a
here.
box on my wish list.
Looks like we've got some common threads in the chat too. You're not the only one who remembers the analog days.
Yep, the good old days.
Awesome. Well, I'm guessing by the comments I know what some of the answers to our like little Kickstart poll are going to be, but we did want to start it off by giving folks a chance to weigh in about technical debt in general. Who in the chat has heard of technical debt before? And press 1 for yes and 2 for no. We got an excited person already. Okay, we got some ones coming in, some twos. All right, awesome.
Wow.
Good skew here. Cool. Looks like we can learn some stuff today then. But oh yeah, here we go. Awesome. All right. So Matt, can you tell us kind of give us an intro about technical debt as you see it, and kind of talk us through what you've seen with your customers and how it maybe gets in the way of some of that execution that you were talking about.
Yeah, let's talk about that. But before we begin, let's set the stage. This is a very non-technical, pragmatic conversation. It's not about the tech. I'm not going to show any dashboards. There's no architecture diagram. It's all about the journey and the conversation. So to start with, Savannah, can you share the slide, please?
Absolutely, I can.
So here it is. The traditional definition of technical debt was all about rewriting code. Wikipedia literally has the phrase code debt in the definition. And if you read it, it sort of talks about defining it as taking the easy route, which is a little bit unbelievably short-sighted and quite frankly judgmental, if I may say so, because who are you to say that I took the easy route? But in the grand scheme of things, That's an old view of it. Let me offer a slightly better definition. Technical debt
Okay.
encompasses all those things that lock you in, slow you down, affect application performance, expose you to security risk, and delay release cycles, and needlessly cost you money. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. And those are all the things that we talk about in the cloud. So let me stop here. Anybody in the poll ever answer um, about what their perspective of technical debt is?
Anything besides the CD example? Looks like we've got some folks who had floppy disks as well.
I actually, honestly, I did too. I just didn't want to go that far back, but that's okay.
Somebody asked me what the save button, in Windows, we've got the little icon for the save button. It's a floppy disk. And somebody recently was saying that it was just like a little square with stuff in it. And I had a momentary crisis before feeling incredibly old and
Yep.
moving on with my conversation.
Yep.
So I think we got a lot of flavors out there.
Okay. Cool.
Can you give us some examples of what technical debt on AWS can look like?
Yeah. So let's actually kind of take the clock back about 10 years. So at one point, AWS defined a cloud maturity model.
Mm.
It outlines 4 quote unquote easy steps to follow toward your path to cloud maturity. So Savannah, this is the part where I actually need your help. Okay, I need your help to go through the steps with me. It's going to be really easy, I promise. You ready?
I'm
Counting on
ready.
you. Okay. All right. So here's how it goes. Ready? First, you migrate your workloads to the cloud. You
Check.
collect profit. Then
Great.
you modernize your code, your infrastructure, your architecture. You
More
collect
profit.
profit. Then you
I'm liking
fine
this
tune.
so far. Gotta tell you.
There you go. Then you fine tune your spend and resources. What do you think is going to happen next?
We optimize, hopefully more profit.
You collect profit. And then you magically innovate the most amazing products. What do you think is going to happen next?
Even better. More $4 signs.
There you go.
Reinvest that optimizations dollars, more profit.
There you go. So that was the prescription. But in reality, the technical debt problem actually got worse with the cloud. Why? Because now the new definition of paying off technical debt actually expanded to essentially encompass every aspect of your cloud presence. So think about this. What do those 4 milestones really even mean exactly? What does modernization mean? How do you optimize? There's a lot of detail here that is not really obvious, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think there are a lot of tools to help along the way as well, but you have to kind of have everything in a similar phase. And I think what I see, at least with my customers, is we're kind of in all 4 of these phases at once, depending on which project we're looking at. And keeping a handle on all of that can be really difficult too. It's not kind of as simple as just saying, okay, we're now going to modernize everything, because you have something that's just coming on to AWS. You have something that's already in the optimization phase. So there's a lot to handle there too.
That is actually a really fascinating way of looking at it, because honestly, if you think about this pragmatically, the more options you have, the more tied down you are in terms of taking action. Think of, for example, if you have, here's just an example, you go to a supermarket and look at the aisle of toothpaste. If you had no preference already, what's your starting point? There are 50 different types. Are you going to start reading each label? Like you have zero starting point, and that's
Mhm.
really part of the problem.
Yeah. Analysis paralysis is absolutely a
There you
thing
go.
that I think we see on the optics team a lot as one of the bigger barriers to optimizing sometimes. There's just so much to do. What do we do first? And prioritizing that and figuring out how to enact it is honestly more than half the battle most of the time.
Yep. So AWS recognized it, so we embraced the 7 R's. So here's a pop quiz actually before we even get started on this. Who knows where the 7 R's came from? Who came up with it? Do you know, Savannah?
I do not.
Anybody?
If anybody is in the
Uh,
chat, speak now
yeah.
if you want to
I'll
feel.
start talking and then I'll come back to this in case somebody had
Okay.
an opportunity to talk about that. So here's how it goes. Through rehosting, you can migrate up to 50% of your workload with lift and shift and operating system upgrades.
Mhm.
That becomes the migration phase. And then once that phase is done, you modernize through replatforming and refactoring. That was essentially the guide. And you can see there's details that go along with it, but there's just too much here as well because nothing is clear. What do those items mean? How do you refactor? How do you go about this monumental task of re-architecting your monolith application into independent components like serverless? How do you go into managed services like EKS? How do you switch to open source? There's a lot here to cover. So
Yeah.
let me pause here a second. Anybody in chat drop anything on the 7 R's?
Nobody's going to be the genius hero today. It's going to have to be you, Matthew.
Okay. So fun fact, it was actually originally the 5 R's and it was ideated by Gartner. And then AWS
Mm.
came in and improved it to 6 R's and then the 7 R's. So that's
So
how
which ones did we add?
I honestly don't remember off the top of my head.
Hmm. I'll look that one up later.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. So here's a problem. So we just talked about the problem, but it the totality of where we are right now is sort of a problem that is not easily solvable because although we gave our customers a clearly defined execution path to follow, in this case, the sort of 7 R's, the model doesn't really encompass the totality of your cloud presence. And it's not even prescriptive about the steps. You'll see what I mean in a minute, because now the new perspective on technical debt includes all these areas. We want you to migrate to AWS. We say use lift and shift containers, any other means. Okay, well, that's a huge undertaking by itself to begin
Yeah.
with. But then after that, we say modernize. Okay, modernization to us is 6 different pillars. Okay, so if you're not cloud native, you're not using managed services or open source, you're carrying technical debt. On the optimization side, there's a bunch of work. You actually have the Twitch channel for this. You know there's just a lot of different ways of going about this. If you're
A
not
lot of nuance.
a lot of nuance. If you're not relentlessly automating, if you're not right sizing your resources and not reducing waste, well, obviously you're carrying technical debt. And then on the innovation side, this is really important. I propose that if you're not using Gen AI, you're carrying heavy technical debt because everybody else is using it.
Mhm.
And then there's this sort of other category because for every project to be successful, especially one of this magnitude, there's got to be executive sponsorship. Without it, there's going to be failure. And we also want you to increase your resiliency and security in the cloud. So let me pause here for a second. Any questions before I go further? There's a lot here.
We've got a question in the chat that I'll pull up in a second, but I did want to kind of tap on that other category as well, because I think that's really important. You mentioned executive sponsorship, but I think I like to think about a lot of stuff that falls in that bucket as kind of the soft skills, the operational, the people side of it. Because when you do migrate from cloud, it is a perspective shift and making sure that you kind of reframe the way that you think about certain things, whether it's how you spin up an instance or how you spin up a workload, to how you bill at the end of the month and how you kind of deliver bills to your customers if you have them, around like a cloud forward mindset is really important too.
I love a host that can actually lead the guest because you're about to see that in a minute. And you and
All
I didn't
right.
even talk about this, so that's amazing.
Whole surprise. Um, Deductor's got a question in the chat of how does AI fit into each of these buckets, which I think is really interesting because
Uh,
I'm sure
Go ahead.
you've seen this, but AWS is trying to figure out kind of how to infuse all that goodness into most of these too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, so really great question. Exactly as Savannah said, it's really still in the grand scheme of things, early days for AI in the context of Gen AI. But if you think very carefully at, for example, the modernization side of this, if modernization is refactoring some code, there's Q for developer that instantly can give you sort of, here's the code and here's the sort of the refactored version of it. For example, as one area, we can think of also using Gen AI, especially like Amazon Q, for things like answering architecture questions. So think of, for example, an organization that has this stream of capable folks coming in and going out. And so if I'm a junior architect and I'm trying to figure out what do I do next or how do I approach something, I can just ask a question. And Amazon Q can actually give me the answer in terms of the best practices for the architecture. There are a lot of different ways you can incorporate Gen AI into all these different components to actually make the journey better. Because ultimately, at the end, on the innovation side, you really have to have a good, modernized sort of environment and optimized environment in order to allow you to do really good, fast experimentation, which is really ultimately what innovation is.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see how this space continues to kind of evolve. I mean, if you even think to like last year, we're in a very different place than we were. And it'll be exciting to see how we can infuse into these buckets over the next 6, 12, 18 months too.
Yep. All right. Any other questions?
Go for it.
Are we ready to move on? Okay, perfect. So there are a lot of different areas here. There are a lot of different components. And as you said, Savannah, eventually somebody's going to end up with analysis paralysis. So the question is, what do we do? So so here's the deal. We at AWS have off the charts high quality documentation, published blogs, white papers, perspective guidance, Twitch shows like yours for modernization and optimization. But what we don't have is an overarching, all encompassing roadmap matrix for addressing the entirety of technical debt. That's what we don't have. We don't have a guide that focuses on how to maximize impact based on effort, how to like bucketize, if you will, the work, and how to prioritize those individual tasks. We just don't have that. So I'm about to help ease the pain, hopefully. So for this next part, I ask that everybody keep an open mind. You're about to see an eye chart, but it's supposed to be. It's a roadmap. I'm not going to cover it all in its entirety, but I promise you, you stick with me for 10 minutes, you'll walk away with a roadmap template that you can actually start using today.
I'm
Fair?
listening.
Okay.
Very fair.
Did I get
I
everybody's attention on this one?
Side note too, I've got like an eye chart slide of all of our billing tools, and it's always like such a jump scare when you put it on, and then when you actually look at it, it's super helpful. So I'm
Yep.
ready for the jump scare.
Perfect. All right. So it's going to go fast. So here's how it works. Think of the columns as chunks of time or chunks of work. For
Okay.
me personally, what I like to do is to give my customers a roadmap that looks at quarterly accomplishments and work, because then I can say, in 12 months, we're going to work together and we're going to accomplish these things. But if that's not your thing, just think of them as chunks of work. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, these are the families of activities. So when it comes to technical debt and paying it off, there's a set of tasks that you need to do, those are the tasks. Those are the top level tasks. So now in a minute, as I sort of populate the grid, you will see
Mhm.
a bunch of things listed. And I've sort of highlighted in orange certain activities that, at least in my experience, have brought more mileage based on the effort as opposed to some of the other things. They're all important, but what you can do is take this template and kind of move it around however you need to, change the quarters, change the chunks of time, or whatever that is, and make it yours in the way that it'll serve you. All right,
Okay.
here's how we're going to go. Let's look at the first thing. We just talked about executive sponsorship. That's really important. At AWS, we talk about CCOE all the time. That is the Cloud Center of Excellence. That is the group that determines, here it comes, what you can or cannot do at AWS. So get a good grip on guardrails. For example, your developers can provision an EC2 that will cost in 24 hours $1,000. Okay, so the question is, do you want to do that and not know about it? So
Mhm.
you can put guardrails around what is permissible and what is not. And while you're at it, really get a good grip on account strategy and tagging strategy, because I promise you, you're going to be punished if you go forward without that in place first, because it's really hard to rework.
It's easier to do it right the first time. That's what I always tell my customers if they're migrating something new on. Like, let's be thoughtful now because it's going to save us so much time in the long run if we're thoughtful at the beginning.
Yep. All right, next, you start identifying owners. So for example, for retention policy, do you go to the different app owners and let them set their own retention policy? Or do you have a storage group that you expect them to set the policy for the entire organization, and then go to the different app owners and enforce that? That is crucially important to figure that out right now, really quick. Okay. And while you're at it, think about upskilling the staff.
Mhm.
And then next, try to move from cloud FinOps to workload FinOps. Cloud FinOps is, what is the totality of my existence in the cloud costing me? Workload FinOps, which is the maturity model, is how much is each application costing me? That is really, really important. That's actually one of the benefits of the cloud in the first place.
One of the big things to call out here too is with 1 and 2, you're really setting the groundwork for 3. You have to have that
Precisely.
tagging strategy, you have to have that account strategy in place before you can get that taxonomy down to a workload level. So I like that these really build on each other and take you through the journey
Yeah,
as well.
precisely. So you can think of this again as chunks of works or like quarterly types of goals to accomplish, but that's generally how this works. All right, ready for the next one?
Hit me with it.
All right, storage. We have 3 different types, obviously, at AWS. So starting with S3, get a really good handle on the classes that you're using and do it really, really quickly. Use intelligent tiering if you need to, but this will save you thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. Really concentrate on the classes of S3 that you're using. And then there's this thing called zombie buckets. Actually, let me
Our
stop for a
viewers
second.
our viewers love zombie buckets. We mentioned
Okay,
these
there.
a couple weeks ago.
Perfect, perfect. So here's an example. During the migration, there was a bunch of files and a bunch of stuff that people didn't know what to do with. They just threw it in some bucket.
Mhm.
Provides no value, nobody cares, nobody's looking at it, and just like real zombies, they must be eliminated. Okay. All right. So, and then while you're at it with S3, I promise you, if you use the right tools, you will find PII, personally identifiable information, and malware. I promise you it's there. And so we have tools like Macy and GuardDuty to help with that. Get a really good grip on that.
Yep.
All right, EBS. if you're using GP2 and not GP3, we just can't be friends. I'm sorry. Okay,
As I've said before, and the year of our Lord 2024, GP2. All right.
your
Okay.
technical account manager literally spits out a report with the exact name of the volumes and how much saving in terms of money and how much faster that this conversion can be. Just please take a minute, take the action on that.
Absolutely. I think we have a query for it in the well-architected labs too. I'll see if I can drop it in the chat, but absolutely. Like it's a quick fix, no downtime, easy
Just
does
do
it.
it. Yeah.
Like just do it.
And then get a good grip on unattached volumes. If they're there and you're
Mhm.
just not sure, just snapshot the thing, do something with it. But sitting around is not a good thing. Thousands, up to tens of thousands of dollars of savings when you take action on this. And there's some tiering on FSX that you can do. We don't need to cover that. We don't need to cover all of these components, but you get the picture here. Now, let's talk about compute. There are absolutely workloads and applications that do not need to run at nights and especially on weekends. Schedule those. And just like GPT-3, use newer instances. Thousands to tens of thousands of savings that you can get from doing that. And then here's a big one: Graviton, especially for managed services. I don't know if it's not quite like GP3 where we can't be friends, but we might have to have an intervention with you.
But
That's just
we're on the path.
we're on the path. Yes, and stick around after this. In just a few minutes, you'll learn all about Graviton. All right, waste. If your lower environments are using multi-AZ, you must question why.
Mhm.
There's no reason for that. And for God's sakes, get rid of old AMIs. They provide no value of any kind. And then on the prod side, I promise you, logs are killing you.
Mhm.
Application logs never get deleted. They get written to some disk, and there's no mechanism to get rid of them. And then here's the other part, like observability or CloudWatch logs. Savannah, just I don't know if you want to put a poll out there, or we just want to do a quick quiz. What is the default retention policy for CloudWatch logs?
Doesn't it never expire or something
It's
awful?
it's
Yeah.
it's zero. It's never. You can
Um,
create log streams per application based on need and save tens of thousands of dollars.
yeah, my coworker Rosa and I, who partners on a lot of the customers I work on, are going through a big CloudWatch cleanup right now, and she's just uncovering so much savings that we didn't even know was out there. Right, like it's just sitting
Yep.
in the log bucket. So definitely
Here,
worth paying attention to.
here's a big one. Endpoints, VPC endpoints. We have seen saving customers literally millions of dollars. Read up on that. Again, the point is not to talk specifically about what those are, but read up on that and really take a good look in terms of whether that you should use that or not. And generally the answer is yes, you should be using VPC endpoints. All right, let's talk about Resiliency Hub. You can set your RPO and RTO for each application and workload, and Resiliency Hub will tell you exactly how far off you are, and it'll tell you the exact set of steps to take. Basically just it'll to walk you through it. You do those things, and then you will reevaluate your applications again. I'm sure everybody knows RPO and RTO: recovery point objective, recovery time objective. Basically, how much data can you lose, and how much downtime can you afford? Basically, that's ultimately what it comes down to. All right, here's another one. If you have enterprise support, and by the way, if you don't, why not? Your technical account manager can execute a security improvement plan. It's sort of an assessment. It's very detailed and sort of similar to well-architected reviews, the security pillar. But I promise you, once you go through this, no matter how good you think you are in terms of security, your eyes will open. You will learn all kinds of new things and all kinds of areas that you can actually improve on. And then well-architected framework, obviously a given thing because just because I think everybody on this call knows why that is important. So I don't need to hash that out. And here's a little bit of a hint. When it comes to modernization, there's like code refactoring and there's sort of operating system kind of work. And so you think about kind of looking at your Linux environment. And if you have old CentOS or if you have licensed Red Hat, RHEL, think about migrating those to Amazon Linux because you can save a lot of money that way. And it'll actually prepare you for the next set of tasks like, .NET Core and those kinds of things. So again, a lot here, and you can think of them as chunks of time or chunks of work, depending on what your organization or how your organization is structured. You can do all of these things at the same time, kind of get out of the gate with all of the items, or you can think of them as different times and different groups. Basically, you can take this template and modify it however you want in a way that will suit you. But let me just make sure I say this. The CCOE part is organizational transformation, exactly as you said, Savannah. This is important. That needs to happen no matter what. Whatever else is happening, those CCOE tasks must happen. There's no way around that. And then if you look at the storage, compute, and waste components, interestingly, traditionally, those are optimization, right? But remember, it's the totality of your footprint that matters and not just refactoring code anymore. Because now it's not until you get to resiliency and security and modernization that you get into the realm of that traditional, I'm going to work on my code, or and in order to do that, I might have to change my architecture and I might have to change a few other things, that sort of thing.
Okay? Absolutely.
Finally, one last thing. You've suffered with me, so I'm going to take you through this. You are absolutely not alone. We are here to help. We know there's a lot to do, and I gave you a roadmap that you can modify, but you can use that as a starting point and reach out to your AWS team because we have all kinds of programs to help you along the way. Look at the blue label, like we have a bunch of assessments so that we can figure out where you are and give you a prescriptive path forward. And there's a lot of these things that are absolutely free.
Absolutely. Again, lots of info on this slide. I think the biggest takeaway, and we'll put this in the show notes as well, is that no matter who you are or where you're at in your AWS journey or even what you're looking for, we likely have something that's going to fit that priority, and then we can slot in here because there is kind of a wide menu, as you can see, of all of the AWS programs and resources available to you. All right. Well, thank you so much for walking us through all of that, Matthew. I really love the way that you've kind of thought it out in the matrix and how you've kind of benchmarked it together. Any last thoughts before we swap over and take a little deep dive into how to find some Graviton opportunities?
So at least from my perspective, never be shy about reaching to your AWS account team. We are 100% incentivized to help you. You're on a journey, and to the extent that you're successful, we are successful. Let us help you. Reach out.
Absolutely. +1 on all of that. It is quite literally our job to help you be successful as an AWS support team or account team member. So, Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Matthew. It was lovely talking to you. And see you again next time.
Thank
We're
you
gonna,
so much for the opportunity. Really
of,
appreciate it.
of course.